This case brief will be discussing and evaluating the argument between King and Burwell. This case brief will be discussing. The King v. Burwell case was presented in front of the Supreme Court of the United States. The argument began on March 4, 2015, and was decided only 4 months later on June 25, 2015. Chief Justice Roberts was the head of the court of this case. The petitioner's side was delivered by David King on behalf of 4 individuals from the state of Virginia. The respondent's side was delivered by Sylvia Burwell, who was the Secretary of Health and Human Services at the time. The image on the side breaks down how the people are divided when making a decision in court. As you can see, the majority was made up of 6 individuals: Sotomayor, Ginsburg, Roberts, Kagan, Kennedy, and Breyer. The dissent consisted of Scalia, Thomas, and Alito. The issue of the public policy involved in the King v. Burwell case actually began in the 1990s, when Congress was trying to help those in bad health get health insurance. However, there were major consequences for their actions. Firstly, people began to wait until they were sick to get health insurance. This then led to a forced increase in premiums for health insurance, making the issue much worse. Finally, this led to what most call an economic death spiral. The public policy question in this case was the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. It was passed in 2010. The purpose of ACA is to expand the coverage in the individual health insurance market. It requires that each of the 50 states in the U.S., including the District of Columbia, to hold either a state or federal exchange. An exchange is a marketplace that allows people to compare and purchase different health insurance plans. Each exchange is made up of 3 interlocking forms that will soon be explained in more depth. ACA is also commonly known as Obamacare. On the slide here, there is a picture of the official symbol. It is a circle with red and white stripes and 2 half blue and white circles. The first reform of ACA is that it bars insurers from taking a person's health into consideration when they are deciding whether or not to sell them their health insurance and how much to charge them. Secondly, each exchange requires each person to maintain a health insurance coverage, or they can make a payment to the Internal Revenue Service, or IRS. Lastly, the exchange gives tax credits to certain people in order to make health insurance more affordable for them. There is an exemption rule to the ACA requiring the purchase of health insurance. It states that those who must spend more than 8% of their income on health insurance do not have to purchase a health insurance plan. The issue of the King v. Burwell case started when the 4 individuals from Virginia did not want to purchase a health insurance plan. They also believed that they should not receive any tax credits because it would make the cost of buying health insurance more than 8% of their income, which would exempt them from the coverage requirement. The Internal Revenue Service, or IRS, disagreed with the 4 individuals. Virginia has a federal exchange at this time, and the individuals did not qualify for the purchase of health insurance without it taking more than 8% of their income. The IRS argued that they must either buy health insurance or make a payment to them instead. The petitioners argued against the IRS, stating that ACA went against the APA because the IRS was going beyond their true level of authority. The APA, or Administrative Procedure Act, ensures the process of federal agencies that are developing and implementing various regulations are doing so in a fair and just way. When analyzing the case, there are two main points to discuss. The first is that there was a need to agree on or clean up the wording so that such an exchange are understood to both mean federal and state exchange, particularly in Section 36B of the ACA. Secondly, was a federal exchange truly established in Virginia? Their exchange must meet the 18031 requirements, which it does, but the Secretary of Health and Human Services established it rather than the actual state. This could possibly mean that the people who buy health insurance through such an exchange would get no money under Section 36B, but that also revolves around the unclear wording. In the conclusion of this case, it was officially decided that the interpretation of the law should be of the entire law, not just isolated words or phrases. This goes back to such an exchange context issues. Also, this addresses that tax credits were intended to be available for both state and federal exchanges. Lastly, it was decided that Congress should speak more clearly when they are authorizing extraordinary cases. Justice Antonin Scalia wrote a dissent that argued for plainer language over tax credits, but overall it was a win for the Obama administration and Burwell. What came out of this public policy case was the question of the available credits on federal exchanges due to its great economic and political significance. It also preserves subsidies in the states who have not established their own exchange and use a federal exchange instead. Here's the citation for the case itself.